President Biden is now trying a new tactic to reauthorize that controversial surveillance program in public and in private. Administration officials are stressing the need to track Mexican cartels and their Chinese suppliers in their push for Congress to re-up FISA, Section 702, specifically before it expires at the end of the year. So, Tulsi, they want to use the cartels because they think, OK, we created this problem with the cartels. Now we're going to try to, reauthorize FISA. Now, are those all noble intentions? No possibility for abuse, right?
No, of course not. Of course they have the best of intentions. What I see when I see them doing this is they have declared the war against terrorism to be over, which was the reason that Section 702 and the secret FISA court was put in place in the first place, along with the Patriot Act, that we've shown has been abusing our civil liberties and privacy for so long. But they say the war on terrorism is over. And so now who's the bad guy that they have to use as an excuse to continue to abuse their power and violate our rights and civil liberties? They're exposing themselves and their own hunger for power and how much they don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about civil liberties. They don't care about the American people and our rights. It's all about themselves and their own corruption.
That was former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard talking about potential reauthorization of the authority for FISA courts. This is a very interesting Politico article. I'm reading about this. So basically, Republicans have turned against this because Trump was spied on, and all of a sudden they're like, defund the deep state. It's great. I'm all for it. Let's apply this, across the board. But fine, good. So they don't want to give Biden this power. They don't want to reauthorize this power. So now the Biden people are being like, oh, but, we could use it to spy on the cartels. And you really want to do something about the cartels. So I appreciate that Fox News, at least Laura Ingraham and Tulsi Gabbard, who's a Fox contributor, are not buying that justification at all because it's crap. I'm reading now. Unfortunately, some Republicans I feel will be suckered into this. In this Politico article, Representative Darren LaHood, a Republican from Illinois, says, when you think about China and Mexico, the ability to use 702 could be extremely effective, said Darren LaHood, who has called for new civil liberties safeguards in the statute, even after the government improperly plugged his name into the surveillance database. So it was used against him, but he can't, further says, it can play an important role going after the cartels and drug traffickers that are, harming our citizens.
Right, yes. Tulsi doesn't want us to see her emails with Modi. We don't want drug cartels to go unpunished, right? There's things on both sides, and we have the wonderful task of separating real from fantasy. Here's the thing. I don't think we pass a law that says, okay, CIA, FBI, go ahead, read our, foreigners' emails abroad. But as soon as they send an email to someone who is American, shield your eyes. How does this policy play out in real life, tangibly? It
plays out with them surveilling all of our emails and calls and things like that, yes.
Regardless of what direction the legislation goes. I mean, we had Bud McFarland testifying on the floor of Congress after we had the Iran-Contra scandal, saying things like it might look like there's something terribly wrong with how this country does foreign policy, but you don't know how wrong. Instead of saying, we have your best interests in mind, anything like that, that's what we're dealing with. This has been true for quite some time.
What do you make of again, this is an ideological development, the trajectory of the Republican Party as like the anti-FBI, anti-CIA, anti-surveillance spying party? I think it's totally fair to criticize it up to a point as insincere. But, now we have had at least some concerted efforts. There have been the hearings of the weaponization of the federal government. You can say it's nakedly political. I totally agree. It is an effort to prop up Trump to some degree. But they are holding hearings. They are complaining about the FBI, the State Department, DHS, the Patriot Act. You're probably more likely to hear criticisms of the Patriot Act on Fox News than you are on CNN or MSNBC.
That's wild. Interesting. It's interesting. It might be, we might see that. But I don't know, Robby. It's like when you say the CIA, has an agenda that is, the deep state, which they akin to communism. What has the CIA spent the better half of the last century doing, if not but dismantling communism wherever they can find it abroad? We won't know what the CIA is up to today. Perhaps they're establishing, a woke state, and they're really helping us out on the left. I think we need some more help. They're funding the gain-of-function
research on the woke mind virus.
They just might not have a lot of experience helping the left wing win, and maybe they're really trying back there. We won't find out for another 10 years until the National Security Archives gets a bunch of declassified documents. We don't know what the CIA is up to, but we do know that throughout history, they've been helping multinational corporations based in the United States extract resources and exploit labor all over the world. And whenever you have some kind of left-wing regime anywhere say, you know what, we actually think that we should get the profits from the resources extracted from our land and the labor done by our people. And then the CIA steps in and says, we have this new guy. He is your president now, right? There are some additional steps, but that's effectively what's happened for a very long time. We don't teach that history. So of course they think the CIA is a part of the deep state and doesn't have their interests in mind, because now there's a disconnect between the establishment right wing, the establishment left, and the populist left and the populist right wing. And that makes this more complicated.
Sure. I would definitely not accuse the CIA of promoting communism. As you point out, they did a lot of overthrowing of unfriendly regimes. But they're propping up a kind of establishment corporate centrism that is not really unique to one party or the other, but there's more. Right now, and maybe it doesn't manifest or translate into policy at all, but there is more skepticism of all institutions on the right. And now a lot of Republican political leaders, you're right, are they going to translate that into action against, as you said, corporations? No. Maybe except in Florida if the corporation says something about education or whatever. But it's so different the way than how things used to be.
I don't know. Is it?
I think the Republican Party used to have. So Ross Douthat in the New York Times had a really good column about how Tucker kind of represented this change that you used to hear. So Republicans, go back to the aughts. Republicans, conservatives, think the institution of the media is against them, and they think the institution of education system, particularly universities, is out to get them. Right. They don't have a broad skepticism of every institution. They're not necessarily against Wall Street or big business or the CIA, or they're not against law enforcement or national security kind of concerns. Now they're with rare exception, against all of those things, whereas the Democrats have become more sympathetic or inclined to hear out. I mean, how many talking heads on mainstream cable news now are former law enforcement people, former national State Department type people?
Right. Yes, it's the revolving door moving and moving again. And people like William Burns, who is now found to be hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. He was someone who was in the Foreign Service, who was an ambassador. He was someone that was what they call a career state guy, and then gets a position with the CIA. And we find him with these nefarious characters, regardless of who knows what they were up to. Was he involved with Epstein Island and the more perverse stuff we associate with Jeffrey Epstein? I'm not sure. Were they just rich guys power broking with each other? We don't know. But there has always been this idea that these career states guys are noble men of service, and that is someone who's fundamentally different from someone who's as corrupt as John Foster Dulles, who worked for the multinational corporations the CIA went on to coup in states where their power was threatened, like in Guatemala. There are people who would say those are worlds of difference, but the everyday American person knows that neither of those actors have their interests in mind, and when you're so disconnected from power, this is the consequence.
John Foster Dulles was an answer on Jeopardy! An episode I watched the other day.
There you go.
Got it correct. And also pointing out the airport, the worst airport ever,
yes.
which is in the D.C.
Part of his
area.
legacy.
Yes. Tomorrow on Rising, we'll be back to speak with Forward Party founder and former Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang. We haven't had Yang on in a while. It'll be great to talk to him. And Jessica will be back with us again. Are you having fun?
I'm having fun.
Day?
We're having fun.
Great. All right, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. See you back here tomorrow.